Hello! Today I'm going to take a look at these two sets of watercolours by Mont Marte. We have a Pastels watercolour set and a metallics set. There are 37 pieces inside, so there are 36 colours and a paintbrush, which we can see on the side here. So I'll get these open and we'll check them out. I'm really curious to see what they're like. They're only fairly new on the market as of 2024, so let's get into it. Just getting into the boxes was a struggle of its own. I ended up cutting the cardboard sleeves off because they were stuck fast. There's a bit of glue on the back of the box there. I've sped this up because it honestly took me ages to get into them. The next obstacle were the sticky dots on the edge of the box, so I managed to peel those off. And then the actual boxes themselves were really hard to open. They seem to be a bit easier now that I've done it a couple of times, but they were just wedged solidly there. I finally got into them. And there's a plastic sheet with all of the names of the colours, there's the water brush, and the same with the metallic set. They're nice solid plastic boxes and I do quite like the design of them. So first up I'm going to swatch the pastel set. And they actually included the pigment numbers, which I'm happy about. Every single one of them has PW6 or titanium white, so they're definitely pastels, and the water brush seems to work okay, but I really didn't use them that much in this video because I prefer to use regular brushes. I started out with the water brush and immediately there was a problem. The paints do not want to activate from dry. It's like they had a coating of plastic on the top of them and they just wouldn't budge. You could see how I'm just not getting any pigment whatsoever onto the paper, and I did a whole line like this. There's just nothing coming off on the brush. And I was just going, oh my lord, is this video over before it's even started? And my first impression was of huge disappointment because the paints look really lovely and nice and bright for a pastel set, but the payout was just terrible to begin with, and I'm going, what am I gonna do? So after I ascertained that none of the yellows were going to work, I decided to drop water onto every single paint in this set so it could sit for a while and hopefully start to break the paints up. You could probably see a few lines down how there's a hole in that teal green colour. I'll be revisiting that issue later in the video as well. But dropping water onto the paints like this really did help with the situation, and as a bonus I even used my mini spray bottle just to really saturate them, and I've probably got too much water in there, but it's better than not enough because they just weren't going at all. So let's start again and see if I can pick up some more paint, and yay, now they're working at least a bit better than they were before. I also grabbed a flat brush with stiffer bristles out of my collection so that hopefully it would pick up paint more easily. And yes, they are going. The colours are very pastel, especially in the yellows. All three of these look quite similar to one another. But it got better as I went into other colours, though I have to say these are some of the strangest watercolour paints I've ever tried. The plasticky feel continued, and I don't know what binder they were using, whether it was gum arabic or other stuff mixed in with the gum arabic, but the paint consistency was very goopy, almost like a jelly gouache or something. I do like that primrose yellow and the orange, those are much brighter colours. But I really wasn't sure what to make of these paints as I was swatching them out. I was thinking, are they even going to work in an actual painting, or am I going to get really frustrated with them because of the consistency of the paint? The good thing is that they didn't dry chalky as a lot of cheap paints tend to do, and I didn't notice any of that nasty chalkiness at any point during the painting. Because I had put so much water onto the paints, I think that was making them quite sort of gluggy as well. But there was no other way to use them, they just would not lift without having that water put on them. The colours in this pastel set are very nice, and what I was really happy about is that some of them are quite bright or dark like that cherry colour. And this means that there's so much more value range in it, with the opportunity to have some darks as well as lights. Because I have tried a few other pastel sets and usually they're just all light and you just can't get anything really good out of them. I much prefer to have some dark ones in there so I can add shadows in with my lighter colours. As I mentioned before, all of the colours do have white in them, so that does give them that pastel-like, semi-opaque quality. I also wrote out all of the numbers in the different paints so you can just see which pigments are in there. I decided to do that on a separate piece of paper because there just really wasn't enough room on my swatch sheet here to write in all of those numbers. A lot of the paints have multiple pigments, and that's not really a bad thing. It just means that they are all pretty much convenience mixes, aside from a few that have single pigments but mixed in with the white pigment as well. I mean, these aren't professional sets, and they're not priced to be either. I think at the time I paid about $15 Australian each, so about $30 for both sets. That's pretty reasonably priced for all of the colours that come in the set, and thankfully at least once I got the water on there they actually worked. I had some serious buyer's remorse going on there for a while, but now I've fixed the problem. I do think they are worth the money that I paid for them. That green apple is a super bright colour, I really like that one. There are some lovely colours in here. I liked the colour palette in total. I think it was very useful, and there's a lot that I could do with these paints. For the most part, bright and pastel colours, but that chocolate is probably the darkest of all of them, a really deep brown, and I do like that one a lot. And I know it's not a pastel colour, but I really wish there was a Payne's Grey in there. I always love to have a Payne's Grey, but I could live without it. It's not that big of a deal. I can mix the iris blue and the chocolate together to get that Payne's Grey colour. I like the names of the colours too, pretty standard, and a few cute ones like mushroom, mint and green apple. And overall, I think the colours turned out better than I initially expected. Though you could probably see as I hold it up closer to the camera, there is that kind of funny gloopy texture on them, and they were quite shiny as well once they dried. So there's definitely a plasticky sheen to them, and I can't explain what it is. But it's not a total deal breaker. So now I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the metallics. I didn't even try them beforehand. I just went straight in with adding water, because metallics are notorious anyway for not re-wetting easily, and they always benefit from having some water soaking on them for a little while. I used the spray as well just to get a thorough coverage there. And now I'm going straight in with that white, which you can't really see, but we'll get into some colours now. Weirdly enough, the metallic set actually seemed to re-wet a lot more easily than the pastel set. They lifted so much more quickly, and I was able to pick up a huge amount of colour from the pans because the water had dissolved that paint really quickly and much more easily than I was expecting. This set did not have the pigment numbers on it, it just had them all labelled as mica, and mica is the shiny pigment which is added to metallic colours. And as I know someone is going to ask, I do not know if this mica is ethically sourced or not. Let's not go down that rabbit warren. Anyway, going to the colours, there were some super pretty ones in here. I really like the pink and rose ones. And it's a little difficult to see at the moment the shininess of them, but there was a decent amount of metallic in them. That amethyst colour looks quite metallic already, as does the purple. I have a feeling that the pigments they've used in the metallic set are probably the same as the ones they've used in the pastels. And no, I don't know how light fast they are. That information was not included on there. You'd have to look up all of the pigments individually to get more information on that, and I am far too lazy for that today. Really, I'm not bothered by light fastness in sets like these. I'll use them in my sketchbooks anyway for the most part. You know, if I had to pick between the two sets and just choose one of them, I think I would go for the metallics. They overall behaved a lot more like watercolours, or how I expect watercolours to act, and I really love the palette on this too. They have some lovely colours in here, and they perform well on the white paper. I'm going to show you them on black as well, but I prefer them on the white because the colour really does show a lot more easily. And these are good to paint on their own, as you can see, but also on the top of non-metallic watercolours, just to give your painting a bit of a shimmer and sheen. That sheen is really starting to become apparent as I paint out more colours. And the colour pigments tend to sink to the bottom, leaving the mica at the top, so it reflects off my studio lights. I think in this set the army green was the darkest one of all of the colours. Most of these are pretty light, which is what I'd expect from metallic paints. There's a nice range of colours. I especially like the blues and greens. There's also quite a lot of earth tones, and I did notice that these were quite similar to each other. I do like the silvery grey ones at the bottom here too. So overall, I think this is a really nice palette, and it's definitely good value for money if you just want to have a fairly cheap set of metallic watercolours that give a decent amount of sheen from the mica. And while those are drying, I'll just show you what the metallics are like on black watercolour paper. You can see they're quite opaque, and the colours were showing up brightly to begin with, but unfortunately once that pigment settles down and they dry, the mica is pretty much the only thing left and the colour sort of sits underneath. So everything ended up looking quite silver by the end, although some of them held their colour better than others. This is a fairly common occurrence with cheaper metallic watercolours. I've tried other ones which do exactly the same thing. These ones actually held up pretty well, all things considered, and they're definitely not the worst metallic paints I've ever tried, and when I paint them on white paper they were really good, so I haven't got much to criticise with this particular set. Like I said, they behaved better than the pastel watercolours. This set did not feel as gluggy as the other ones did. The paints flowed more smoothly and acted like regular watercolours with the metallic in them. Maybe a little bit more to the gouache side because they are quite opaque, but that's totally fine because opaque colours are definitely better on black paper. Transparent colours will just disappear. So once I finish swatching these out, I'll show you them both on the white and the black once they've fully dried. Oh yes, and now I'm remembering, these brownie colours all looked exactly the same pretty much on the black paper. I couldn't really discern much difference between the browns. They all had that reddish hue to them. And once they dried, they all pretty much went silvery. I'll just do this last line. I do like the silver colours on the black. Those stood out really nicely, and that blue slate colour's very pretty. So let's take a look at these lovely shiny paints once they're dry. They look really pretty on the white paper. I like them a lot. They have a strong mica sheen. Maybe some would consider them to be pearlescent, but I think overall Mont Marte has done a pretty good job at a nice metallic looking set here. And now I'll show you them on the black paper just so you can compare. At least I think that's what I was doing, yes. And you could probably see there's a couple that are still a little bit wet. I was too impatient to wait any longer, but for the most part, when you tilt it, in certain lights they look colourful, and then when you look straight at them they are very silvery. But as I'm looking at them on camera here, they do look a lot more colourful than I'm remembering them being in person, if that makes sense. I do actually think they're really nice on the black now I'm looking at them again, but I do still prefer them on the white paper. So now it's time to paint with both sets, and I decided to use them together in the same painting, so I'm starting off with the pastel colours and then I'll use the metallics over the top. I found a cute picture of a couple of parrots, and then I'm making up my own colour palette for them so that I could try and use all of the colours in the sets. I painted in their eyes with that dark chocolate colour, and that worked really well actually. It's a really dark brown, so it works well enough as a black. And now I'm painting in a light layer of the pastel colours, just picking different ones. I think this bird ended up being quite rainbow coloured in the end. And I noticed as I was painting with them and using a lot more water that the pastel set actually did start to behave more like watercolours, and it wasn't anywhere near as gluggy as it was when I was painting out the swatches. You could see the paints actually running really nicely in the water, and I was really pleasantly surprised by this. They were dispersing nicely on the cotton paper. And while I was letting that parrot dry, I moved on to the other one. This one's going to be more pinky colours because I just thought those would be pretty together. And I'm not sure if it's because I had removed that top layer of the paints, but yeah, they're just working so much better now. And as I said before, there's just no apparent chalkiness in them, which is really fantastic. So for a set that I initially thought was going to be an epic disaster, it actually turned out okay, and I like the paints a lot better now. They layer well on each other. I'm doing a second layer on the birds because I wanted to make the colours more saturated, and just the colour palette itself is really pretty. I love the teal colours. I think those in particular are really lovely. I'm so happy to give these paints a good review in the end because I really wanted them to be good. As soon as I saw them I thought they looked nice, and I was hoping that Mont Marte would actually put out something quite decent that's in the lower budget range. Once I got over my initial disappointment, they are working a lot better, although there are still some flaws in the paints, and I'm not sure how well the pastel palette is going to hold up in the long term. I'll show you the palette at the end so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. The colours do have that pastel look to them. They're very soft and they're not super bright, but they had enough brightness in them that I could actually make something quite nice out of these. I think they worked really well for the parrot's feathers, and now I'm going over everything with some of the metallic paints just to give a nice sheen on top of the pastel colours. I could have left the pastel colours as they were, they look really pretty, but I decided I may as well just do everything on the one painting because I couldn't think of another painting to do just with the metallic colours, and I also wanted to know how well the two sets would work together. It turns out really well, so I'm happy about that. A lot of the colours from the two palettes are very similar to each other, and so they complemented each other nicely. So I'd love to hear in the comments what your favourite brands of pastel watercolours and metallic watercolours are, because I'm always interested to try out new ones. I haven't had very much luck overall with pastel colours, just because I tend to find them too light. But this set I think is one of the better ones in terms of being able to get a variety of values. And this is one of my favourite paintings I've ever done with pastel paints. That dark chocolate is a great addition as well. So I didn't really know what to do with the background. In the end I decided to add some water and then just drop on some of the metallic colours to give a shiny abstract background that doesn't take away too much from the parrots. You can see they also disperse nicely in water, and once I'd let everything dry, I just went over some of it with some pens just to get some definition. I stuffed up the beak on the left-hand side there, but I managed to bring it back in the end, and I just added a bit of black pen to the eyes to make them a bit darker as well. Also adding a bit of white pen on there for a few highlights, and overall I'm really happy with how this painting has turned out. I think the colours are gorgeous. And they worked out so much better than I was initially expecting, so that's always a win. Lovely happy colours in this one. And I'll just hold up the painting so you can see some of that metallic sheen happening there. It really does show up well under the studio lights, especially when I start to flip the paper like this. I mean, I used a lot of metallic in this particular painting, but you could use less to have a more subtle sheen. I like more. So this is everything I got done today. A full page spread in my sketchbook with all of the swatches, a lot of shiny metallics to look at, and here's a reminder of what they look like on the black paper. Very silvery, but some colour showing through at certain angles. And then on the other page I did my painting of the two shiny birds. I really like how this turned out. I think it's lovely and happy and lots of bright colour in there, which I always enjoy. Let me know what you think of the colour palettes. Do you think they're pretty? But I'll just address this one other issue I noticed, and can you see how the paint has kind of peeled away in a few of the colours, especially that teal green colour? See what I mean about them being really plasticky looking? And it seems like as I added that extra water, it's made the paints break down a lot. I don't know what to make of this. I've never seen watercolours do this before. Is it an air bubble? It's really strange. A lot of them seem to be doing that. You can see there's bubbles forming in quite a few of the other colours. So that's why I said they're some of the weirdest watercolours I've ever used. It's also happening in the metallic sets, although not quite as much. But this is very much something to be aware of if you're considering buying these paints. I don't know how long they're going to hold up for, so they may only be good for a little while. It's really hard to know. I think overall both sets are quite nice, but I just don't know if they're going to be very long term with the way the paints are breaking down in the palettes. But I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, I really appreciate a thumbs up, and you might like to click the subscribe button for more videos. I've got a couple of other Mont Marte videos here for you to view, and I'll see you all again really soon in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!